Hey, what a treat, what a treat. It's Gabe's 30 years of drumming. We're going to break down a couple of songs. You're going to hear a lot about what happened during those 30 years of drumming. Not just how he played what he played, but why he played it, which is one of our mantras here on DrumChannel. And we thought it would be fun. We're going to have a little random drawing. All you have to do is just comment on the lesson tonight, anything you think that you thought was really cool about it, or any questions you have about it. And we'll do a random drawing over the next couple of weeks while we continue to post this on Facebook and on DrumChannel Live also. What you will win is 4 possible grand prizes. There's a Zildjian Sweet 16-inch cymbal, which we're not going to hear right now, but we're going to hear in just a couple of minutes because Adam's adjusting the microphone over him. And also we have another grand prize, which is 2 Remo products, which is going to be 2 pairs of two Pro Packs from Remo, that's right. And we have a pack of sticks, 5 pair of sticks, which are actually signature sticks, and the signature happens to be Gabor Dornyei, the one and only. We're going to find out about Gabby Road and something else. This is going to be the strangest thing you probably ever heard on a drum lesson. How many frogs you can swallow. And there's actually a story behind that that is important with what you're actually doing. So as long as we can hear about what 30 years of drumming is all about in 60 minutes, you got it.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today or later on. It's a great pleasure to be back on DrumChannel. And my 30 years of drumming story is very simple. I started playing the drums when I was 10, and last year I turned 40. And throughout that 30 years, however we count it, it's 30 years. And throughout that 30 years, I haven't done anything else remarkable, only played the drums. I feel extremely fortunate about that and privileged to be able to build and maintain a career out of this. And it's just, I don't know how that happened, but the most important thing that after 30 years, I'm still learning. I'm improving. I enjoy every second that I can spend behind this marvelous instrument. And the thing is, you know, if I'm practicing, if I'm playing, I feel like I'm improving. I'm getting better by focusing, by concentrating, by enjoying what I do, my musical expression, my technique, my experience, everything grows on a daily basis. And basically my 30 years drumming tour, which is start today officially, and what a prestigious place to start it then on DrumChannel, is going to be all about sharing the gift, sharing my experiences and the knowledge that I gained over the 30 years. It's never been easy, but always been fun. And we keep the fun factor in mind, and we're here to hear your questions. Please comment, and you can win this gorgeous, amazing 16-inch Zildjian Sweet Crash, which is the first time ever that Zildjian produced an extra thin crash. This is fast and sweet. Wonderful. I would really like to win one of them.
Not just a crash cymbal, though.
Yeah, all of them.
There's a whole series of the
whole series, the 21-inch K Sweet Ride that I'm using here, and a 15-inch hi-hats as well, which are amazing.
So just comment or get into the chat on drumchannel.com, and we'll pick 4 names to get 4 of the grand prizes coming up. Your masterclass here that we just shot on DrumChannel, which will be a course, is open hand, open mind.
Yeah.
And in spending all day and yesterday with Gabor, you really opened my mind in a new way to approach playing open hand on a drum set and why it's so important to do. We actually have a question here already, like, why is it important to play open hand? And I think probably the question is coming from the background of how you hold your sticks, not how it relates to what it does to your playing on the drum set.
Yeah, well, why is it important to play open-handed? For me, it really multiplies the musical possibilities that I can offer to the music. And that's our ultimate goal, you know, to play with an ease, play elegantly, play musically, come up with interesting ideas. And for me, this posture, when you sort of lock yourself down, I like to use this phrase, when you lock yourself down with the right hand crossing over the left, sort of diminishing the function of the left hand to the backbeat. Of course, I played like that for a long time, so I know that many things possible to do in this position. But since I started experimenting with an open-handed position, what I realized was that the entire drum kit opens up in front of me, so I can add additional tom sounds, additional melodies, cowbells, tambourines, extra hi-hat, bells, splashes, you name it, and I can add all that to the already existing grooves, which make it just even more interesting and hopefully more musical. Now, that's my ultimate goal. I'm not striving for speed, although I like to, play fancy patterns and virtuosic drum fills, but it's never been my goal, to be as fast and as loud as I can be. What I want to be is more like musical and interesting on the drum set. And I'm a great believer of the phrase that you're only as good as your weakest limb. Now, if you have a super weak left hand and a super weak left foot, then it's really going to hold your musical expression and your progress on the drum kit back. Because you'll always feel that if your left hand is up to half the speed and then your right hand, you're not even going to be able to play a fast single-stroke roll, which is probably the easiest rudiment because you just play one right, one left. Not to mention the double-stroke rolls or the paradiddle system or any of the rudiments, which is pretty much the combination of singles and doubles. So I really enjoy experimenting with this and adding new ideas, challenging myself. So first I started playing singles, doubles, and then triple strokes, and we recorded a whole course on DrumChannel, which you can find on the DrumChannel website, about open hand, open mind. That's the title, and we got a lot of exercises, how to build up, how to improve your weaker side.
Something I love about your teaching as an instructor, which you're certainly well known for, as he was doing the courses, it's not you teaching how you do what you do, but you're very much explaining what you learned from somebody and how you're passing that on. You're kind of the student in between. Hey, this guy just showed me that, and here's how I apply it, and here's how I do it.
Yeah.
Which is a very easy way for the student to comprehend, what you're saying and what you're doing. So check out his course here. It's really good. And plus, we have a lot of the little short secrets of the pros. But
yeah.
You're going to break down the tune we just played, right?
Yeah. Also, just as a reaction to your previous thoughts, I think it's very important in my teaching that I always accent and always mention it to my students that I'm always learning. So you're never ready. It's not a thing that you can set in a certain time that, okay, I'm going to practice for 2 weeks and I'm going to be a wicked drummer. It's not like that, because I've been doing it for 30 years and I'm still, I know that I've got so much to learn, and I'm learning every day. I'm checking out drummers, and you just steal. We all, thieves. You just see something that is really cool, you just learn it, and from that moment it's yours.
I think it's more inherent to us as drummers than any other instrument. But all the great players that we have that just tend to just drop in here at DrumChannel from time to time.
Yeah.
Alex Acuna will be here, Terry Obosi in his room.
Oh my God.
I'm trying to find him. Here Alex is giving Terry a lesson, and Terry's giving an Alex a lesson. They'll stay there just as if they were students,
Yeah, so that's the spirit, and I think it's very important that we keep that spirit, okay? Because you can always learn, always improve, even on the simplest thing that you do. And that's the other thing I always tell my students, that on the millions and millions of selling pop records, very often they never play anything complicated than I just did. It's so much more simpler, and that's the simple and easy stuff if you play it really well, because you got to execute the simple beats really well in order to be able to play something complicated in the future. If you listen to, say, John Robinson, who was also here on DrumChannel, or any of the groove players. In the afternoon, we talked about Jeff Porcaro, who's another massive favorite of mine. I'm doing a completely different style, but I'm trying to steal from them and learn from them and check out the balance they play with, the sound they play with, the groove, the feel, where they put the backbeat, what's the hi-hat phrasing, how they play the right cymbal, and that's why it's very, very important, I think, and the best way to learn the drums is if you listen to the right people. Okay, so it's very important who you listen to. And there's a lot of footage online on DrumChannel, and there's everything is, not saying it's given, but everything is there for you. Just go and grab it.
Then the question is, what we're talking about with the first song that you just played.
Yeah.
You learn how to play it, you have the facility to play it, you have the technique to play it. Why do you play it when you play it?
Yeah, exactly. Now, it's very important that the technique is there to support your music, okay? And not the other way around, okay? So the reason why I can play this with an ease is because I've got a certain amount of technique, that these things are not very complicated for me to play, although I've been probably practicing them for 20 years, this kind of drumming. Now, very important thing that when I started playing this groove, to the song titled Moving, It's a great friend of mine, George Fry from Budapest. He wrote this song while he was moving house, so that's why the song is titled Moving. And he's a bass player, a wonderful bass player, and he came up with the groove that goes boom, bam, boom, ga-da-ga-dim, doom, gang, boom. A lot of pushes, doom, goom, 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 goom. So you already got the basic vibe. Okay, it's very important that you create and set up your grooves according to the music. Okay, you don't want to play outside of the whole context. Okay, so I had the basic phrasing. Okay, ga-da-ba-dum, boom, 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 ga-da-dum. And also it's very important to notice that this is a swung groove, okay? This is a swung groove, which means it determines the feel of the groove that you are playing. So that means if this groove was played in a straight fill, it would be this. Okay, so that's not the feel here, because you probably noticed the difference. So these are the swung eights. So that's the whole feel of the song. Okay, that's the most important thing, that whatever you play should be swung. Okay, unless you want to play against it deliberately, which I did sometimes in my fills, when you play like straight 16 fills, which makes the whole thing very interesting. Like, for example, Peter Erskine told me the story that one day Joe Zawinul told him that if you dare to play straight triplet fills in a shuffle, which is based in triplets, I'm just going to kill you. That's what he said, because it's so much more interesting to play sort of sometimes move outside of that subdivision context, but that's just for interesting stuff. Okay, so that was my bass drum groove that goes with the bass guitar. Okay, so the bass riff, the main riff, determines my bass pattern. Boom, 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 boom. That's your backbeat. Boom, boom, 3, 4. It's very important, even if I'm not playing the subdivision here, you can still feel it, that my bass drum pattern is swung. Because of the timing. And then I thought, okay, that's great, but I really like to hear the offbeat, which is like, it gives me the feeling that I'm playing with a percussionist. Now, it's been my concept for decades, probably nearly 2 decades, that I'm playing the percussion and the drums together, because it keeps me out of trouble, so to speak, okay? So I wanted to include the offbeat, which is happening on the tambourine, because when you listen to a percussion player, they play the tambourine on the offbeat. But I wanted to have this funky cowbell sound on this amazing Tycoon percussion cowbell here, which is set on my floor tom hoop between the snare and the floor, and on the bass drum hoop between the snare and the floor tom. So that's my beat 1. And these are the offbeat. What you want to do is you want to add the snare drum, not on the 2, but on the 4. Sometimes towards the end of the song, I added the 2 and 4, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second. But the main thing is that that's your right-hand ostinato. And then I orchestrated it between cowbell, tambourine, snare drum. Okay. Okay, so I still have the possibility to come down to the snare. So now we're playing 3 different instruments on the right hand. And if you were to play the swung 8 notes, the ghost notes of that on the snare, you would have this kind of sound. Now, what I found out is, what if I put the left hand, orchestrate them musically on the lip blocks, on these Tycoon lip blocks, which are actually included in my signature drum pack. I have a signature drum pack on Tycoon Percussion, which is distributed by Hal Leonard in the US and Active Music in the UK, and it sounds absolutely brilliant and gives an extra percussive sound to my groove. So I kept the bass drum. I found out, okay, I can add some melodic variations to it. If I play the first snare on the right hand of the main snare, this beautiful sounding reference pearl snare, and the other one is on the piccolo snare, and from there, pack, boom, I can go down to the floor tone with the right hand. Very important thing that it's really easy to mess up these patterns if you're nervous or if you can't control your limbs. Okay, so first thing first, everything's got to be in a very comfortable position. Probably you see my entire posture. I'm trying to be very relaxed. Okay, my shoulders down, elbows down. I see people, coming to my Gabor Dornyei studio for lessons, and the first thing they do is elbow goes out and they tense up, legs are up, they all tense and straight into the pushing the beater into the bass drum head, and elbows go out and shoulders come up, and they try to play in a very sort of rigid posture. Now that's the best way to lose the game here. Okay, so I'm trying to be as relaxed as I can, and notice that everything is bouncing back to me. Okay, so even the cowbell, it hits the stick back. It comes back to me naturally. Okay, from the tambourine, I'm flying back. I'm bouncing back from the tambourine. The snare. Massive rebound. Okay, so these guys, and that's the secret to the open sound that I'm achieving on the drums. That I'm not pressing it, not pushing anything into the surface, unless that's the sound you're after. Okay, so sometimes you see different effects, or if someone want to do like buzzes or whatever. If that's what you're after, it's totally cool. But for this song, it works really well to me that everything is bouncy and everything is jazzy. Okay, so so that's the main groove that I'm playing throughout the melody. Now, very important. So the bass drum follows the bass guitar. The right hand plays the percussion pattern. The off beat on the tambourine, coming from the cowbell, plays the the backbeat on the snare, and the left hand adds the different percussive melodies. Now, that's for the main groove. And for the guitar solo, yeah, did you have a question?
You said the bass drum follows
the bass guitar.
The bass guitar. So when you were actually in the room for the first time playing with the bass guitar player, is that the order? He played the riff and then you picked it up, or were you playing something? How do you integrate back and forth with the bass player to decide if he's playing what you're playing or you're playing what he's playing?
Well, no, it's because it was integral part of the composition. George showed me that, okay, I'm playing this and I would like you to do this groove. So it could be the other way around, but in this particular instance, what happened was that he had a fixed idea that, okay, this is what I want to achieve. And so that was his basic idea, which I'm going to play now, which is quite difficult to play the rim click between the bass drum pattern. And basically, boom, takum, 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 kak, takum. And for the guitar solo, what I thought, how cool that would be if I managed to work out my swing pattern, because the right hand now plays the full swing pattern, which I wanted to learn with the left hand anyway. So I turned the whole thing over, and the upside down, the entire groove went upside down, and I started playing the swing on the left hand. Again, you probably notice that my stick is bouncing back to me, okay? And then with a little independence, advanced independence, you can add the rim clicks on the right hand. And then what I did was I nicked a really cool thing from William Kennedy. He was one of my favorite drummers. He also plays open-handed. He's a great drummer with the Yellow Jackets. And sometimes he plays this little sound when he sort of pushes the stick and it hits the hi-hat and the snare head. It doesn't really hit it. It's just sort of a little push. Also, the other thing, which it's a really cool sound. It's just an effect sound, but very interesting. And then what I did was, because I don't have my right hand above the left, I can easily pick up the stick from the rim click position and add the snare drum with the rim shot on the 4. Yeah, because I don't have to do this sort of getting out of the way of my other hand. Yeah, so that's one of the other advantages of not playing sort of cross-handed.
Just want to mention, if you go to drumchannel.com, there's a download of the main beats that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And of course, you're throwing a lot of other ones in that we're going to be transcribing when we repost this on DrumChannel, which will be on next Monday. But that'll make it easier for you to follow what's going along. Also, on the DrumChannel player, you have the ability, when we repost it, to slow it down. So
Yeah.
if you're just beginning, you can just look at the foot camera or the overhead camera, take it as slow as you want, so you can learn how to play exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Because when you say it's easy, we know it's not so easy, right? So as you do the swing pattern and integrate that back and forth in the open hand, how did you decide that there was a point in the song where you wanted to play a particular pattern which allowed you to have to do that?
Yes, because musically I wanted to, so the whole song is pretty happening, and I came up with different patterns. Probably you noticed that for the saxophone solo, I opened up for the right cymbal. Now, what's the reason for that? That's the sort of, for my taste, that's the sort of the jazziest part of the song, and I wanted to open up the sound. Now, that very often happens in popular music, or particularly also in jazz, not necessarily particularly in jazz, but in contemporary music, that for the B section of the song, if there's a bridge, you change your articulation and your orchestration from the hi-hat to the right cymbal. Now, the reason for that is very, very obvious for all professional or advanced player, but if you're a beginner player, it might be something you want to consider to say, for example, for opening up for a section musically, you want to use the right cymbal because it's a bigger spread. It opens up more quickly. Particularly this amazing sweet ride. You know, it's so thin that it's really good to crash on it as well. This other one is my old favorite. It's a special dry K custom ride. And so what I did was I changed this pattern and check out how much the sound and the whole orchestration changes if you just go from one to the other. Also, you automatically add the backbeat on takadon on the left foot. You can add. You can add a really funky couple of cowbell hits, can really spice up the whole thing. So you didn't really change the pattern, but still always something interesting happens. So the song constantly grows and brews, and everything is just happens there.
If David Payne had entered a contest as to guessing who one of your early influences was, David, you nailed it. He asked, is Billy Cobham one of your early influences?
Well, Billy Cobham is...
No brainer.
Billy Cobham is my king, you know. I just love him, you know, his touch and speed. And the amazing story about Billy Cobham is when he was about 5-6-year-old and he went to a drum teacher and automatically started playing like this. Drum teacher asked him, what are you doing? And I said, I'm playing the drums. Well, you're supposed to be doing this. And he asked, why? And the answer was, just because. So there was no real answer, because this whole cross-handed method came from the old days, when in the 1920s, the hi-hat was added to the drum set. And at the time, coming from the military and marching band background, everybody played the traditional grip in the left hand. And instead of, when they added the hi-hat, instead of doing this, opening up to the match grip and play the hi-hat with the left hand, because that's where the hi-hat is, they kept the left hand in traditional grip position and put the right hand above. And ever since, we stuck with that. Now, just tell me, just if you think about it, tell me one example that you played the right cymbal, which is on the right-hand side, with the left hand. You never do that because it's just in the wrong place. You know, it just doesn't feel right. And we stuck with this playing the hi-hat with the right hand because that's what you just get used to. I mean, I assume that you can get used to everything and you can play, but if you don't necessarily have to, if you want to improve or try out new ideas, why not to try and equalize the left hand? So we recorded in this afternoon a lot of equalizer exercises, which I would suggest to check out on DrumChannel. And also, like 15, 20 years ago, when I first added the lip blocks to my kit, I deliberately put them on the left-hand side because I wanted to learn all those patterns, mostly for the Latin rhythms, with my left hand. I thought that how could you possibly be very serious about drumming if you can't play single and double strokes on each hand? You need to be able to do that. And a lot of these patterns are just combinations of singles and doubles.
Show us a couple of those. The ones that
Say,
you did
for example,
earlier.
if you want to do this. Now, what I'm playing here is the Cascaro rhythm. It's nothing else than singles and doubles. I added the left foot clave to it, and I thought, I just gotta be able to learn it with the left. This one is pretty advanced, but you don't start it there, okay? So you gradually build this up. By the way, this one was a drum intro that I recorded on my Drums Music and Friends audio CD, which is available from my website and also on iTunes. This is a drum intro to the famous Dizzy Gillespie track, One Night in Tunisia.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so it's been inspired by the great Horacio Alnegro Hernandez, whom I just bumped into at the NAMM show, and we had a very inspirational chat, because he just said, man, I just want to stop working. And I said, what do you mean you want to stop working? He said, I want to go back to practicing. He said, because when you're busy and professional, you're touring the world, you play with Santana, you play with Michel Camilo, you play with whoever you play with, the last thing you do is practice, because you're just always on the road, and you never get around to sit down and properly focus. I mean, to gain that kind of independence that Horacio has on that level, it's a lifetime and a day, okay? And you really got to maintain it, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's what he told me, and I was so inspired. He owes me half my life. He's stolen like 2 decades from my life, because when I first heard him, I didn't think it was possible that someone playing the clave with the left foot. And then when I first saw his instructional DVD with John Patitucci in duo, they just played at the Modern Drummer Festival. That was the first time when something was a little bit more clear, because it was just 2 of them playing. Because when he played in a band, you know, there's a brass section and piano and guitar, and so everybody's shredding. You know, it's really difficult to hear what is it that he's doing or what the patterns are that he uses. But when they play just as a duo with John Patitucci, like, of course, they were fantastic, like really mind-blowing, and he's slowed down a couple of the things. So that's the other thing that is super important to mention here, and these are the things that I learned over my 30 years of drumming, and these are the things that I really enjoy sharing with the new generation of drummers, or even with the older generation, because you always learn that if you start practicing and learning something that is completely new, slow it down, because that's the only way our brain can really process the information. Okay, because if you jump on it and try to play something complicated like this, it might never going to be clear, because you haven't clarified that what are the things that meant to be falling together and what are the things that are in the gaps, so to speak, like in breaking it down to the most basic level. And also the other thing that I did a lot, you know, transcribe what is it that I want to play, to understand how, if you have, say, for example, odd note groupings or polyrhythmic ideas, how the notes are going to relate to each other. Now, the good news is there's only two possibilities. The notes either going to fall together or not. And if they're not, then they're in the gaps. Okay, so they're either together or not, unless you want to flam it on purpose, but that's a different story. Okay, so your notes either together or not, and you just got to work it out, which notes, if you play something more sort of orchestrated or more independent, then you just got to write it out, see the lines each other, how do they relate, see them under each other together or separately, so your brain can really process the information before you start to put it together and speed this up.
You mentioned DVDs, or the forerunner of that, of course, was beta tapes, where so many drummers learned from the luminary drummers who we look up to for sure all of our lives. And that's part of the mission here on DrumChannel. The idea of having our master classes, which we call our courses, and our artist tracks, is so great drummers can come out here and put their content together and offer it to you. This is kind of like the place where the drumming community can come together to give you a virtual version of a DVD, which you can download instantly. And I do have to say, growing up as a jazz diehard, that you are also an advocate of the traditional grip sometimes, right? You're not saying you would never play in a traditional grip.
Oh, absolutely not. There's nothing against it. You know, I love the traditional grip, and I would never talk anybody against it, because my approach is that you gotta choose the horses to courses. Okay, the right tool at the time. What is it that you want to play? If you play a marching band, a snare drum piece, or if you play swing, or some of the Latin stuff, say choir, samba, or bossa novas, or something, I would automatically change to the traditional grip without noticing, you know, subconsciously, because you play different things, you approach the drum kit differently, your sound changes, and your vocabulary changes, because probably you end up playing different things than what you would do with the match grip, and that's the ultimate goal. All we want to do is be as versatile and musical as possible. So I would never talk anybody down or never talk anybody against to play the traditional grip, because I love it. And it's very interesting what I learned from Joe Morello from his old VHS tape, as you mentioned. It was a VHS tape, what was it called? The Natural Body Motion, where he's shown, you know, the relation between the two grips, how very little the changes. I don't know in which camera you can see the most. Sure. That basically all that happens is with the traditional grip, you got the entire weight of the arm underneath the stick. So there's nothing pushing the stick down. All you have on the top is the thumb and the index finger and probably the middle finger, if that. Okay, now that really changes if you're in the match grip position, because you got the entire forearm on the top of the stick. So this way, you're naturally going to have a heavier backbeat. So if you play arenas or in a rock band, I would certainly suggest to play in the match grip. So it's just, you know, horses for courses. So you just got to know what is it that you want to achieve, what sound you're after, what speed you're after, what is the volume you're required to play with. Because, for example, very often it happened to me that people told me that I was too loud when I sort of grown up when I was 17, 18, 20. And that was the time when I started playing in jazz bands. Because previously I came from rock. You know, rock was my background. Me and my sister were big rockers. And so I played with a good you know, natural power and volume, and people in the jazz band started telling me that I was too loud, so they struggled to hear the piano, or if it was an acoustic bass or something. So I automatically find myself changing to the trad grip, because this way I find myself, you know, easier achieve the same speed in a quiet settings. It might be different for somebody else, but this is how it worked for me. And also, you know, if you want to play the comping notes for swing, for me, it's much more comfortable to play in the traditional grip, not to mention the brushes.
That's a question we have here from David. You took the question right away. Do you play traditional grip with brushes? My guess would be for sure yes.
Absolutely, yeah. Not that you can't play the brushes with the match grip, because if you see my friend Florian Alexandru Zorn, who's an absolute brush monster from Germany, He's fantastic, and he plays the same techniques on both hands, and he's very musical, so everything is possible. But for me, for the jazzy feel and the swing feel, I automatically change. And also my favorite, Billy Cobham, you know, he plays in 4 different grips. I don't know who's seen his 80s, end of 80s instructional video.
I've seen it.
You seen it? When he plays sort of in 4 different grips. So the right hand plays the match grip, left hand the tread, and then he plays, of course, match grip, and then he plays the right hand in a traditional grip, and both hands traditional. And he achieves that great speed. I really like to do that. You know, sometimes I ride with my left hand and play the comping notes with my right hand in traditional grip, and because I want to keep it quiet, I'm probably going to use the tread grip as opposed to the match grip.
I took a bit of a shortcut. I learned it all right-handed, and then I just played in front of a mirror and pretended I was doing it left-handed.
No problem. Everything is possible. You just got to learn the independence. You got to learn to bounce the stick back off the snare, because that's a crucial pattern. This was a groove that I learned from Steve Gadd. He plays it again on his old VHS tape, which I'd grown up on. You know, that's how I learned back in the day. I sat in my mom's room because that was the only place where we had a telly. We only had one telly in our house, and I kept watching, you know, Steve Gadd all day long, and Steve Smith and Erskine and Bozio, Simon Phillips, all the big boys. And the next day, I went and I started practicing what I learned the previous night. And of course, you know, the Joe Morello thing is very, very interesting because he explains the technicality and the sort of background of the traditional grip. So I started learning that, and of course I combined several techniques. So for example, if I play the singles, you know, at a slower tempo, I probably just use the thumb as Tony Williams would when you open up these 4 fingers, and pretty much you're just bouncing with the thumb. And then for the doubles, at a slower tempo, I would probably still use the thumb to start with. And when I reach a certain level, a certain speed, I add the index finger and I incorporate this pull-in motion that I learned from Joe Morello. Everything is possible if you learn from the masters and then you try to incorporate all those techniques.
And if the young kids out there aren't that familiar with Joe Morello, go into entertainment here on DrumChannel.com and scroll down to historical shows. We have 250 shows, but when you go into historical, Joe was out here for many days, and we have a lot of information, not only from an educational standpoint, him playing for bands, but a lot of great stories, because the stories are so inspiring and motivational.
I wish I could ever, you know, meet him.
We have, want to do a quick shout out to Robert Stoneman. He's watching from Australia, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, mate.
Want to know if you can pay back in black, but we're kind of short on time here as we go through the lesson. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of do some shotgun questions for you here to see if we can get through them.
Okay.
What size sticks do you play? Another way I could ask that question is, what size sticks are you, Mr. Dornyei? What do you have in your signature series stick?
Now, these sticks are wonderfully designed by Vic Firth, and with my name on them. It's available from my website, gabordornyei.com shop. The closest to my sticks are the Vic Firth X5A. Those are the closest to it, because I've been a huge fan of the Jack DeJohnette sticks. The white, again, white finish, and they're just beautiful, and they feel good. They're slightly longer than the normal X5A. I don't like the, if I'm doing rock gigs, probably I would choose a 5B, but that's a little bit heavy for my general playing, because I like to have this open sort of jazzy sound. So I really enjoyed the 5/8 feel with a little bit of an extended reach, because that way, you know, I'm very comfortable. My arms are down here, and I can reach out to all my instruments on this slightly bigger kit. So my signature sticks are closest to the X5A from Firth, so slightly extended, longer 5/8, and apparently they're going to be available from the DrumChannel website as well.
We wanted to know, you in playing primarily open grip, I think we kind of covered this, the reason you do it, and when you switch back and forth from open grip to traditional grip, do you do it within the same song sometimes?
With the same song?
Yes.
Absolutely. It depends on the feel. And also there's a very good tip that I want to share with you guys. First of all, how do you change fluently between the grips? This is very important, because once you can change, if it causes a problem for you, then you're going to be pretty much in trouble to go from one to the other. But if you can do it with an ease, then you find yourself doing it naturally. Okay, so there's two main ways that I know which you can do. One is that I demonstrated, that I learned from Jojo. I played with Jojo many times. First time I opened for him was in 1996 in a drum festival in Hungary, where he was headlining, and I played just before him. And that's the sort of over and under motion, I would put it that way. So basically, without twirling or really moving the stick, all you do is you just move your wrist. So you go under and over, under and over. So this kind of over and under motion, and he does it so quickly, you can, you know, you hardly even notice that he changed his grip, because he's so quick. And also you can practice it, try not to move the tip of the stick. So you can practice it quietly on a practice pad or even on the snare, and try to get the stick to move the least that it necessarily has to. Okay, the other thing that you can do, yeah?
No, go ahead.
Is I call it Dennis Chambers way, but many people switches the stick this way. Now, this one is the only useful stick trick, which is not even a trick. It's a twirl. The way I sort of understand it is, when you're in the traditional grip, you play a note like you would on the snare, but you don't hit anything, so the stick goes down and turns over. I don't know which camera is that one. Okay, so like you lift it and you just let it turn over. Okay, so basically that's what you do. It's like lifting and like hitting the drum, but you don't hit the drum, you miss the drum, and allow the stick to come over. Okay, one more time. Boom.
Hold it a little higher and do that.
Okay.
There you go.
Just like this. Okay. Now the other thing, and when you want to come back from the match grip, what happens is I put one finger over. So the index finger comes over, and these three guys pushing the stick down. Okay, so from the match grip, you put one finger, index finger comes over, and these three guys push the stick down. So back and forth is this. Okay, so that really helps your not just vocabulary, but imagination with the different grips and the different sounds, because it's an easy process. If you struggle to do it, then you're going to be less keen to do it.
Do you ever play with two sticks in one hand, is a question.
Absolutely. Very often I've got a couple of grooves when I play, say, for example. This is a groove composition that I wrote a couple of years ago. This one's called the Budapest Funk, and I hold two sticks in my left hand in order to reach both jam blocks or lip blocks. And this way, I get a more sort of full, fat sound. Absolutely.
I want to give Josh Trask a clue, because he asked that question. Anildo Racia has lessons on the site. The third hand, you've seen those. Check it out on DrumChannel. It's in Secrets of the Pros, right, Adam? I've got that right? It's Anildo, third hand, we have it up as. Where he plays two sticks in one hand with different clave patterns. Anyway, if you're practicing that and into it, that would be a fun thing to look at. A couple of questions relevant, and I know we're going to have to play ourselves out here, but one of the big obvious ones is, musically within that song, why do you have a second bass drum, is a question.
Very, very good question. Now, the reason why I have it because I try to tune everything very, very differently. Because if you have a 4-piece kit, you got so much less sort of musical choices to go for. But because I'm using 5 toms and 2 different sounding and 2 different size bass drum, 2 different snares, I try to tune them as different as possible to give me more vocabulary and musical choices. So what would be the point to have 2 bass drums that sound the same? It would probably look good, but my bass drums sound very, very different. And these are the beautiful Pearl reference series bass drums. And the main one is a 22-inch. And also the head choices are very, very important. So this one is a clear Power Stroke 3 that I'm using on the main bass drum. It's a deep, rocky sort of fusion sound. And this one is very, very jazzy. It's tuned up, so the tuning is different, and the head choice is different because it's a coated Power Stroke 3 on my auxiliary kick. And if I play jazz, say for example, if I were to do like a swing number, all these patterns would sound rock or very, very rocky. I don't think that sound would really fit this type of playing or this type of music. So I use it in the first song. Thanks for spotting it. I really appreciate it. It was worth the hassle bringing it, you know. Luckily, the police didn't stop me on the way here because I couldn't see anything in the mirrors from that kick drum. But don't tell anyone. I hope I can make it back to LA to the backline company. So I use it in the guitar solo and the saxophone solo because musically, I felt like my playing has to come back a little bit. You don't want to be in the way of the soloist. You want to support the soloist. So my dynamic changed completely. I went down to the rim click. I went back to the hi-hat from the previous big shredding on the cowbell and all the percussion. Everything was busy. And when the solo started, I went back to... Because you want to give like a cushion. You know, you want to be a basic underneath the soloist to let them play. Because if you're busy all the time, first of all, people are not going to enjoy playing with you. You're not going to get the calls because you're just too much. Most important thing is to know your place in the music and know your function. What is the drum kit function here? The beginning, I played as fast and as loud as I could for 10 seconds because I want to grab all your attention, and then down because there's a melody. Okay, so then we go down, and then we come up again for the fills, and then we go down again for the solos. So you support the music, you pay attention to what's happening in the music because you're no longer alone. You know, you're not a solo drummer when you play in a band. If you do drum solos, you can play as fast as you want and as loud, as long as you can. But if you try to join in and jail in with the band, you want to follow what's happening in the music. So that's sort of a next level thinking that you no longer just consider yourself. What is it that you're playing? You adjust your playing according to the music. And that's another thing that I love to talk about, and this is what I'm going to be busy with this year on my 30 years drumming tour, where there's going to be a lot of course, technical education, you know, sharing the rudiments, technical things, tuning, all the tricks, and also what I experienced and learned over the 30 years, because the only way to learn it is by doing it.
As soon as you know the dates of the tour, we'll post them here on DrumChannel.
Yeah.
You also have a position as head of a drum department?
Yes, I'm teaching.
Where is that?
I'm teaching at several universities. I'm head of drums at this American, US-UK university called the Detroit Institute of Music Education. I wrote the drum course for them, and I'm the head of drums at the online department. So people from all around the world sending their videos in, and I give them feedback. I'm on faculty at the Institute of Contemporary Music Performance, ICMP London. I've been there for over 5 years now. And I'm head of drum department in Italy at the Jewel Academy in Cosenza. And whenever I have a second to breathe, I'm offering private lessons from my Abbey Road studio, which is in my garden in London, UK. And people approach me via Skype, so they can have Skype lessons. I've got a brilliant Roland TD30 drum kit, so I can, you know, a webcam, and I can see people from all around the world. And whoever is lucky to be in London or anywhere in the UK, people traveling to me, you know, I really appreciate the effort they make. You know, sometimes they come over from Germany, Netherlands, all over, you know, they come down from Scotland, everywhere, and I'm just privileged to have them.
You're going to play a track for us to play out.
Yeah.
And we should start that right now, but I've got to ask you if you can do a fairly fast version of something you did a little earlier today, the Gabby 5. I thought that was so cool when you played the polyrhythmic figure.
The Gabby, yeah, the Gabby 5s. Now, that's a very interesting thing, something that I started experimenting with years ago when I first heard Vinnie Colaiuta. It was actually in 2000. I was really lucky because he gave a clinic and a concert performance with a band called Charisma. Now, Vinnie hardly ever does clinics because he said it in many interviews, he absolutely hates it. And I mean, the information we received was totally mind-blowing. So we were praying to God to end it because it was just so much. We couldn't take it. After the third number, we were just sitting there like a stone, you know, and didn't know where we were. So on the way home from Vienna to Budapest, we did not talk. I was with another 2 drummers, and we were just sitting like this for 3 hours, no talking, because there was so much information we couldn't process it, you know. And we felt like if this guy is playing drums, then we are certainly not drummers. Or if we are drummers, then this guy is not a drummer, he's a UFO from a different planet or something. So the difference was just unbelievable. Anyway, so I started, of course, listening to his playing more and more, and I discovered a concept that he uses very often, together with other great fusion drummers, that they play the same rhythmic phrases over different subdivisions. So for example, this one is fairly difficult to explain, but I tried to break it down for you. So the rhythm, if you play it over 16th notes, you're going to have a groups of 5. So basically 1 E and the 2 E and the 3. These are the 16th notes. And you end up accenting in groups of 5, which is... Okay, so now this is fairly advanced for beginner players, so I would suggest you just enjoy what we're doing here, and later on you can probably learn it. So, and I started playing these 5s with flams. So the first part is a flam tap, and the second half is half of the flam accent. So it's 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. I play it is right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right. That's the beat. 1 2 3 4. Orchestrate it however you want. So that's the 16th note thing. And then you can slow down the subdivision to triplets and play the same phrase. Yeah, so it's very interesting. So the same rhythmic concept, first over 16th note subdivision, and then over triplets. And you can work it out. You can work out your 7s, you can work out the 9s, and orchestrate them however you want them, flam them, or you play with diddles. There's zillions of ways to do it.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
A wealth of information. 30 years of drumming, capsulized into a short little hour here. But before we leave, we've got to talk briefly about what's the saying that you learned in your homeland?
Yeah, this is a straight translation from Hungarian. Is how many frogs can you swallow? Now, it sounds very, very strange, but it's I know it doesn't exist in English. I translated it because the music business, in my experiences, unfortunately, is full of frustration. You never quite feel like that you're there where you should be. You feel like you're being held down, you're pushed down. You might have a day job which you want to quit, but you can't make a living out of playing the drums. Or if you teach, your hourly rates are not quite great. If you apply for an endorsement, they don't get back to you. You know, company people don't necessarily reply, and the organizers let you down. They're canceling the gigs in the last minute. Your student doesn't show up. So there's a lot. I mean, I could write a list, man, like forever, that how many problems I had to swallow. And how many times I had to hold my feelings back from telling someone what I really meant, you know. But in the long run, I always learned that how good I didn't tell them what I thought at the time, because that would be the end of the conversation, you know. And so basically, I think this thing should be part of the curriculums at universities or even secondary schools. That how do you manage your frustration in the music business? How do you communicate? Because with communication, you can really avoid a lot of trouble. How do you come back to people? How do you approach them? You want to be on the case, but you don't want to be in anybody's face, because then you become too much. So probably that's why they decline your request. So these things, you know, frustration management or action management should be part of, in my opinion, in higher education programs, at least, if not sooner, because you know, 50% of your success is down to how you manage yourself and how you communicate, and the other 50% is how you play. Because I can guarantee you, if you're busy practicing 12 hours a day in your garage and nobody knows how good you are and nobody opens the door, then in 30 years' time, I'm going to find you in the same garage. So you need to be out there socializing, show your face, prove the world that you're there, that you're good, that you're reliable, you turn up on time, you're prepared, you're nice, you're sociable. So these things are 50% of the business. And I'm not a great socializer, in the sense that I don't have the time to do it. But I know if I had the time, what I would do is go out there and show my face and hang out at Ronnie Scott's and go down to all the jazz clubs in LA. And I would meet everybody, I would jam with everybody, I would be nice and talk. And this is what leads to gigs, and ultimately that's what leads to work.
Hey, that's why you're here on DrumChannel.
Yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere. You just come here and we'll have you all around the world.
And I can share my thoughts and my experience. I think these are very, very important things, honestly.
Thank you, and thank you again for joining us. What's the song you're going to play us out with?
This one is a composition from a friend of mine, Sagat Giri, and this one is titled Arabiata. It's a great sort of Arabic rock composition, and I really hope you're going to enjoy this.
Great. Let's hear you play it.
Thank you.
That's a big finish if I ever heard a big finish.
Yeah.
You have 2 weeks from the time we repost this lesson on DrumChannel.com to comment on it at all, whatever you would like to say, and you have a chance of winning one of those 4 grand prizes. Thank you so much for joining us, and check out what DrumChannel is all about. Hang out and see what it is. It's happening right now. Thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.